Troy Thompson. I got my bachelor's in exercise science from Capital University, and I'm trying to go to grad school right now.
Okay.
I wanted to go back. You were talking about periodization from like a small group versus like a large team setting. How do you feel like, what would you use periodization wise in each one? Or what's your feelings on it?
Large groups.
Like working with like a large football team, say, 60 plus athletes, versus where you work with 5, 10, 15 guys at a time.
5, 10, 15 guys, you can essentially program however you want to program, because you can make the modifications, in the program fairly easily. You can have the overall scheme work. There's 7 or 8 that I'm writing a program for now. Most of them work here, so they're at the beginner, intermediate level. They're all basically doing the same thing, with just, rarely do I need to make notes, on the modifications. Now, as we get closer to when they compete, 2 of them are pro lifters. They need a different. They're going to be doing different stuff. I mean, it's got to break out. But during the phase that they're in right now, it's pretty much the same, which is more, I'm not going to say it's pure hypertrophy, but it's more hypertrophy based. I conjugate, I couple the strength components. I don't completely block to where here's strength and here's, power and so forth. I try to keep everything moving, in a direction. Something may be stabilized or lowered, but it's still there. It's never removed. On a large group perspective, for what you do, there's a built-in advantage that you have when it comes to programming, is they all suck. When they're in the weight room, they're all beginners. They all suck. You might have the rare kid that happened to have a really good high school strength coach and sent that kid to you. Lower levels, it's not going to happen. I mean, rare, like once every 10 years. Higher levels, maybe a little more chance of that happening. Where, to me, I don't see any need in really any organized or periodized structure for somebody that doesn't even have the technical skill set to do the lifts. So they need to learn the lifts. So that's the most important aspect. It can be debated. People will say, if you take a shitty looking squat, from a shitty looking 200-pound squat to the same shitty looking 300-pound squat, they got 100 pounds stronger. I get that, I understand that, I just don't like it. It's not my philosophy. I'd rather have them squatting correctly, which I feel is more safe, and then in the long term, I'll guarantee they're going to graduate with a bigger squat and have a less chance of injury throughout the process. So if I was to do it, which I don't wish upon anybody, unless you have a lot of help, I would try to keep everybody doing the same stuff and divide the groups up, at least for the first part, based upon technical skill of the lift. So the guys that squat good will squat together, and then the guys that kind of squat like shit. I'm just throwing ideas out, okay? If I had to, this is what I do. It's Mark, you've learned from Mark, so probably a much better way. I would want to try to put the best in 1 rack or 2 racks, and then have everybody else use the other racks, and then have my support team deal with everybody else. In other words, I don't even give a fuck. I don't care. I just let them do whatever training they want to do. 3 sets of 10, just basic training. I don't want them hurt. That would be the end goal. Do whatever you want to do, push-ups, just don't do stupid shit that's going to get them hurt. I don't want to see, clean and jerks for 50 reps. You know, I don't want to see stupid shit, you know, that puts the athlete at risk. You know, compound lifts, body weight movements, core development, that's what I want to see. That's what I want to do there. And then I would put all of my own personal focus in those other 2 racks to develop the best technical, skilled guys I could. Nobody, to me, is ever going to squat 100% perfect. But if I get them to 80%, and that group that they're in is being taught the verbal cueing to be able to keep it at that 80%, you know, head up, knees out, wherever the breakdown is. That's what my goal would be. If I can achieve that goal within, and I don't know, you got weird time periods when you're dealing with football, because you got spring ball. I mean, there's a lot of, you have, I think, like a 12-week period, a 6-week period, and like another 6-week period. If I can get that done within 1 period, to me, I've satisfied my goal. Because what's going to happen, not in that period, but in the next one, those 2 groups are not going to exist anymore. I'm going to take 2 guys out of those groups and put them with all the other people who don't have the technical skills. So now what I'm going to have is the coaches to be able to help, but I'm going to have 2 guys who know the verbal cueing and know how to do the lifts, training with them, helping do the job. You see what I'm saying? But you got to keep 2 of them. That's what I'm saying. You got to develop a number of them at a time, because if you only put 1 at each station, they're going to hate it. Because they're going to be like, dude, I'm squatting, because they're going to be the biggest lifters in the gym. You know, I'm squatting 300 pounds. I got to squat with these guys that are using 95 pounds. That's bullshit. So you want to move 2 of them so they can still get some good hard training in, which the reason they're good is because they like it. And then once you move them to those other groups, I do believe and feel that it would be contagious. You know, you would have the technical cueing, but then you would have that drive and motivation that would go up in that group because of that. And that's how I would do it. And never done it before, but seems like a plan to me. You know, technique is the most important thing in my mind. But
that's pretty close. I mean, for a long time, you try to get your best lifters in with those lifters that are the younger guys, or they have some postural issues or have some technique flaws. And the problem is that it just watered down the rest of the workouts. And we almost got to the point where, again, we have, you know, if we have our best lifters, if we have Teddy and Joel, like I said, this coming year in the same rack, they're going to be able to push each other, and you'll be able to focus. You know, you can, coaching wise, you can focus. In fact, you can go one more. We label some of our athletes in that first spring period, from mid-January to mid-March. We label as putzes, which is PUTS, physically unable to squat. For whatever reason it might be. Maybe it's experience, maybe it's postural, but whatever it is. But then you have an opportunity to kind of, now all of a sudden you have one group of 4 athletes on one rack that all have something that they need to work on to even get to the point that where they can have they're not even at a point where they can have a shitty squat, because they can't even squat yet. So, and then like I said, I like what you're saying, because you do want that. You do want those good lifters to have an impact. So it makes a lot of sense. But you're right to do that right away as you're teaching, to take intermediate squatters and coach them with beginning squatters is very frustrating for those intermediate squatters until you can get at least an acclimatization periods where you can, you know, just get them at least caught up. So they can, I mean,
the cons I would see with this would be that the 80%, you know, that don't have the technical skills are going to feel ignored. You know, I do see that as being a con. I mean, there are always pros and cons, and I don't, like I said, I don't do this, so I don't know how you'd work around that con, and it may be too big of a con that it's too big of a risk to actually try to put in there. But the verbal cueing is huge, and I wouldn't let those premier racks, or whatever you would call them, I wouldn't break them out until that verbal cueing was happening on every single rep, every single set, the way it's supposed to. And if you go look at, I can probably say, even with confidence, and this is without being at Westside since '05, I don't care what video you have look online, you're going to find verbal cueing on every single lift. You're going to hear very little rah-rah bullshit. Everything's going to be technical, and it's all going to be specific to whatever that guy is. And that's essential. In the verbal cueing, say on a squat, so you got a guy that's got a tendency that his knees are going to come in. That has to start before he even takes the ball. Well, you walk it out. As soon as he gets his stance, that's got to start. Knees out, knees out, knees out, knees out. It's going to do him no good to say it when his knees come in, which is what you normally see. It's going to come in, someone says, knees out. First off, he's going to be lucky to hear you. All right. Second, a little late, dude. It already came in.
Yeah.
You know, if you're blowing that cue out, which is specific to that guy, every 15, 16 times, how many, you never shut up. You know, knees out, knees out, knees out, knees out, knees out, knees out, knees out. And then when you see that he gets past where it normally comes in, head up, you know, whatever the next one is. You know, and you get that whole rack doing it, and it becomes a habit. I don't care what you do, you move him to another rack, it's already a habit. You know, it's boom, it's going to start on that other rack, and it will be contagious. And hopefully, you know, that will spread. You know, the first year would be the toughest. You know, after that, well, you're going to have returning guys. And then hopefully with some luck, you're only going to have to teach the freshmen. So now instead of having 80% that don't know what they're doing, it's only 20%. And to be honest, you can then put your focus on them because it's not even needed on those other ones anymore. And that would be the core lifts. You know, after the core lifts, I would group everybody together and just let them knock out their dumbbells, you know, whatever you're having them doing. At that point, I'm not really big into segmentation, you know, because I don't want this group and this group and this group because you're just going to create drama. You know what I'm saying? After that, it's like break out, and then this guy can go train with his buddy over here and do the accessories and so forth.